Welcome back for another deep dive. We use so many common phrases every single day, but have you ever stopped to think about where they came from?
Oh, absolutely. The origins of language are fascinating.
Well, get this. Today we're exploring phrases coined by, you guessed it, Shakespeare.
Wow.
It's wild how a playwright from centuries ago can still shape how we speak today, right?
It really is incredible. The longevity of his impact, his work is just timeless.
Yeah, timeless is the perfect word for it. And our guide for this journey is this super interesting article from the Times of India called 8 Phrases Popularized by Shakespeare That Are Still Commonly Used Today.
Well, that sounds like a great read.
It is. We're going to unpack some pretty surprising origins. Like, for example, did you know break the ice comes from the taming of the shrew?
I actually didn't.
Or how about this one? Wild goose chase actually originated with Romeo and Juliet.
You're kidding.
Right.
Wow, you really don't realize how much of our language comes from Shakespeare. It's amazing how his genius wasn't just in telling great stories, but in his incredible use of language.
Mm,
He captured these universal human experiences that we still relate to.
right. And speaking of the taming of the shrew, it's so interesting how break the ice has evolved from that literal meaning in the play to, well, I mean, we use it anytime we're trying to ease tension or, get a conversation going.
It's true. It's almost like he predicted how awkward modern social interactions would be.
Ah,
But the
right.
funny thing is, that phrase actually predates Shakespeare.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it seems like him using it in The Taming of the Shrew is what made it stick around.
I guess that makes sense. He had a knack for using expressions that really resonated with people. It makes you wonder if he knew he was creating these catchphrases, or was that just his natural way of expressing himself?
That is a great question, and it's actually something scholars have debated for centuries, really. Could have been both.
You're probably right. I mean, he was a genius after all. He just had this natural understanding of people, and that combined with his poetic talent, I mean, he could craft these phrases that just transcended their context and took on a life of their own.
Exactly.
Now, Romeo and Juliet, we all know it. It's a play full of drama, twists, and turns. But I never would have guessed it's the source of Wild Goose Chase.
It's surprising, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's such a common phrase now. Like, anytime you're going after something that leads to nothing. Did people in Shakespeare's time actually chase wild geese?
They did. It was a type of horse race, actually. Riders would have to follow a lead horse in a winding, totally unpredictable course, much like how a wild goose flies.
Oh, that's a great way to visualize it. Now, I get why it means a pointless pursuit. We might not be chasing geese on horseback these days, but, well, we chase metaphorical ones all the time. Dead-end jobs, relationships that are going nowhere. I mean, we've all been on a wild goose chase at some point.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Shakespeare's work so enduring. He was able to tap into those really basic human experiences, things we can all relate to, even today.
Let's talk about green-eyed monster.
Okay.
Such a powerful phrase, right? It really captures that feeling of jealousy. It comes from Othello, doesn't it?
It does. It's from a speech where Iago, the villain of the play, warns Othello about jealousy. He calls it the green-eyed monster, which doth mock the meat it feeds on.
Wow. What a way to put it. It really captures how jealousy can eat you up inside.
Exactly. You're left feeling tormented and empty.
It makes you wonder how jealousy was viewed back then compared to now. Has it always been seen as this negative emotion?
That's a tough one. It's complex.
Yeah.
In a lot of Shakespeare's plays, jealousy leads to tragedy and destruction, but it was also viewed as a normal human emotion,
Yeah.
even a sign of passionate love sometimes. I mean, societal norms around jealousy have definitely shifted over time,
Yeah.
but it's still a powerful force in relationships, that's for sure.
Shakespeare really had a grasp of the complexity of human emotions. Okay, let's switch gears to something a little more positive. Heart of Gold. What a great phrase. That one's from Henry V, right? A play about leadership and bravery.
That's right. It makes perfect sense when you think about it. I mean, Henry V, he's this noble and courageous leader,
Yeah.
and Heart of Gold just fits him perfectly. He's compassionate, inherently good, things we admire in our leaders even today.
For sure. It's like Heart of Gold makes you think of someone who's just genuinely kind and generous, and those people are always needed in the world.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a reminder that even when the world feels cynical and selfish,
Hmm.
there are still people who are truly good and caring, like Henry V. Those are the people who inspire us.
I love that. Okay, ready for another one? Vanish into thin air. Now, this phrase just evokes magic and mystery. It's from The Tempest, isn't it?
Yes, It
That
is.
play's all about illusions and the supernatural.
Right. The main character, Prospero, he uses the phrase to describe how spirits just disappear, like they were never there.
It's such a cool visual. Like Shakespeare really knew how to create this sense of wonder and otherworldliness with his
He
words.
did, didn't he?
I have to admit, I'm always drawn to those stories of magic and the unexplained. And Vanish into Thin Air just nails it. It makes me think about all those unsolved mysteries, things that just seem to defy logic. Makes you wonder if there's more to the world than what we can see, right?
Totally. It speaks to that human desire to believe in the unknown, that maybe there are forces out there that we can't fully grasp.
Okay, let's get into a phrase that's basically a life lesson in itself. All that glitters is not gold. I mean, everyone's heard that one, right? But did you know it's from The Merchant of Venice?
It is. It's fascinating how the way we say it now is a little different than how Shakespeare originally wrote it. He said, all that glisters is not gold.
That is interesting. It's kind of like these sayings have been passed down through the ages and they've changed a little bit along the way. It shows how language is constantly evolving, being shaped by the people who use it.
Exactly. It's so dynamic. It adapts to different cultures and contexts. The wording might change, but the meaning, the message behind it, usually stays the same. And in this case, the message is, don't be fooled by what things look like on the outside. The true value might be hidden beneath the surface.
And this leads us to a phrase that I just love. The world is my oyster. It's just so full of optimism and possibility. You know, what's funny is it comes from a character who isn't exactly known for those qualities. Falstaff from The Merry Wives of Windsor.
That's right. He's a fun character, Falstaff,
Oh,
known for his humor, love of food, and his ability to, well, get himself into some interesting situations. But even he sees the world as a place full of potential.
that's really interesting. Shakespeare takes a character like Falstaff, who's often seen as kind of lazy and selfish, and has him say something so hopeful and inspiring.
He does.
It makes you think maybe there's a little Falstaff in all of us. That desire to see the world as this vast opportunity just waiting to be explored.
There probably is. I think we all have moments when we feel like we can achieve anything. We feel limitless. And those are usually the times when we're at our most creative and resourceful.
For sure. Okay, ready for our last phrase for this part of our deep dive. It perfectly captures those times when we find ourselves in a bit of a, well, predicament, in a pickle. What a fun expression, and I bet you can guess where it comes from.
I bet I can. The Tempest.
You got it. You know, it seems like every other phrase we've talked about today has come from that play.
The Tempest really does have some memorable lines, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay.
So, in a pickle, it's spoken by the King of Naples, Alonso. He ends up shipwrecked on this mysterious island.
He does.
Well, being shipwrecked on a magical island with a vengeful sorcerer, I'd say that definitely qualifies as being in a pickle.
Definitely. Although the meaning's broadened over time. It's not just for those dramatic situations anymore.
Yeah, it is.
These days, it can be any kind of challenging situation. Stuck in traffic, facing a tough deadline, having just a bad day. It all counts.
I like that. It's like Shakespeare gave us this collection of phrases we can use to describe all the ups and downs of life. We might not face sorcerers or shipwrecks, but we all get into those metaphorical pickles, right?
We do. And it's kind of comforting knowing that centuries ago, people felt those same things. Stuck, confused, unlucky. It's all part of the human experience.
You're right. It's like Shakespeare's reminding us that no matter what, we're not alone in our struggles. And even when we feel in a pickle, there's a phrase for that.
Beautifully put.
Welcome back, everyone. It's amazing, isn't it? After diving into those Shakespearean phrases, I can't stop seeing them everywhere. It's like I've unlocked a secret code to everyday language.
It is quite remarkable. Shakespeare's influence truly is everywhere, woven into the very fabric of our communication.
I totally agree. It really highlights how powerful words can be. They can bridge centuries, connect cultures. It's incredible. It's almost like we're having conversations with Shakespeare through the language he gave us.
That is a beautiful way to think about it. His words have become so deeply embedded in our language that they shape our thoughts and expressions without us even realizing it.
Absolutely. So let's jump back into those phrases. We left off talking about ambition and that wonderful phrase, the world is my oyster. It's so optimistic, so full of possibility. And it's funny that it comes from Falstaff, right? A character who, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly known for being a go-getter.
You're right. Falstaff was more about enjoying life's pleasures than chasing after ambitious goal.
Exactly. But even he, in his own way, saw the world as full of potential. And that's what makes Shakespeare so brilliant. He could create characters like Falstaff, full of flaws, and still have them say things that are so deeply inspiring.
Precisely. It speaks to the complexity of human nature, the idea that even those who seem focused on self-indulgence can still recognize the vast potential that exists within each of us.
It's like Falstaff, despite his shortcomings, understood that we all have the power to shape our own destinies. The world truly is our oyster, just waiting to be opened and explored. And speaking of seizing opportunities, let's move on to a phrase that reminds us to be a bit more cautious. All that glitters is not gold.
Ah, yes, a timeless warning from the Merchant of Venice. It reminds us to look beyond superficial appearances because what seems valuable at first glance might actually be worthless or even harmful.
It's like he knew about all the scams and schemes that try to trick people with promises of easy riches.
He definitely understood those darker aspects of human nature, the desire for quick gains without considering the potential consequences.
And that's why his works are still so relevant today, centuries later. He was a master at exploring both the good and the bad in humanity. Speaking of those darker sides, let's talk about Green-Eyed Monster, that incredibly powerful metaphor for jealousies. It's from Othello, right? A play filled with the destructive consequences of that emotion.
Yes, Othello is a tragedy driven by jealousy, fueled by the manipulative Iago. And that phrase, green-eyed monster, perfectly captures how jealousy can consume a person, twist their thoughts, and poison their relationships.
It's fascinating how he uses the color green in that way. Green is usually associated with life, growth, nature, but in this phrase, it becomes something sinister, almost menacing.
Exactly. Shakespeare was a master of language, and he knew how to take something seemingly innocent and transform it into a symbol of something much darker. In this case, green becomes the color of envy and malice.
And the image of a monster just adds to that sense of something powerful and uncontrollable taking over. Like jealousy is a force that can destroy everything in its path.
That's a great point. It reminds us that unchecked jealousy can be incredibly destructive, leading to irrational decisions and ultimately causing irreparable harm.
It's a timeless theme, isn't it? The way Shakespeare explores jealousy and betrayal in Othello still resonates with audiences today. Okay, let's shift to a more uplifting phrase. What about Heart of Gold? It's such a beautiful expression of kindness and generosity.
And it's fitting that it comes from Henry V, a play that celebrates heroism and strong leadership. Henry V is often seen as the ideal king, brave and compassionate.
Heart of Gold perfectly describes those qualities, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It suggests someone who is genuinely good, who cares deeply for others.
And it's not just limited to kings or heroes anymore, is it? We use Heart of Gold to describe people from all walks of life. It's become a universal symbol of goodness.
Exactly. And that speaks to the power of Shakespeare's language. He was able to capture these core human qualities in a way that transcends time and culture. Kindness, compassion, empathy. Those are values that have always been important. They continue to be celebrated today.
I love that. Okay, ready for another one? Let's talk about vanish into thin air. It's such an evocative phrase. Makes you think of mysteries and magic, the things we can't quite explain. And I bet it's from The Tempest. Am I right?
You are. It seems like The Tempest is just full of these amazing phrases. It's a play filled with magical elements, and vanish into thin air perfectly captures that sense of the supernatural, of something disappearing without a trace.
It's a phrase that often pops up in stories about ghosts or unexplained disappearances. It always gives me chills. There's something both fascinating and unnerving about the idea of something simply ceasing to exist.
I agree. It taps into our fascination with the unknown, those mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding. The world is a strange and wonderful place, and Shakespeare reminds us that there are forces at play that we might never fully grasp.
All right, let's move on to a phrase that's perfect for those times when we find ourselves on a frustrating, fruitless pursuit. Wild goose chase.
Ah, yes, another great one from Romeo and Juliet. It perfectly captures the feeling of chasing after something unattainable, of putting in a lot of effort only to end up empty-handed.
It's like those elaborate plans in movies where the criminals think they've thought of everything, but then everything falls apart. No matter how clever you are, sometimes your efforts just lead to a dead end.
That's an important lesson, too. Recognizing when a pursuit is futile and knowing when to redirect your energy towards something more productive. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is to cut your losses and move on.
Very true. And through his insightful use of language, Shakespeare captured these complex truths about human nature and the world around us. It's like he's giving us a guidebook full of wisdom and observation, one phrase at a time.
I love that analogy. His words have truly become timeless tools that help us express ourselves, understand the world, and connect with others across time and culture.
And as we continue exploring, I think we'll find even more evidence of his enduring brilliance. But for now, let's take a short break and come back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of Shakespearean phrases. And we're back for the final part of our Shakespearean journey. It's incredible how many phrases we've uncovered that come directly from his plays. I mean, break the ice, the world is my oyster, all that glitters is not gold. I'm starting to realize just how much Shakespeare shaped the way we speak, even today.
It's remarkable, isn't it? And what we've discussed is just a small sample. His influence on language is so much greater.
It makes you think about how language works, you know? These phrases started in very specific plays, often meaning something a little different from how we use them now.
That's true.
But somehow the core idea, the essence of what he was saying, it survived all this time.
It has. It's like he understood something essential about being human, something that goes beyond time and place. His work continues to speak to us because it's about universal truths. Love, loss, ambition, jealousy, all those emotions that make us who we are.
We have one last phrase to explore today. It perfectly captures those moments when we find ourselves, well, stuck in a tricky situation. And that phrase is, in a pickle.
Oh, a classic.
It comes from, you guessed it, The Tempest, right?
You're on a roll. The Tempest is certainly full of these gems.
It is. So, in the play, the King of Naples, Alonso, is the one who says it. He finds himself in a bit of a predicament after being shipwrecked.
That's putting it mildly. I mean, he's shipwrecked on this mysterious island with a powerful and, let's face it, vengeful sorcerer.
Yeah, you could say that's being in a pickle. But it's interesting how the phrase has broadened over time.
It has.
We use it for all sorts of situations now, not just dramatic ones.
Exactly. It could be anything from a minor annoyance to a full-blown crisis.
So it seems like language is always changing, adapting to how people use it. But even though the context for in a pickle has expanded, it still has that same feeling of being in a tough spot, you know?
It does. It's a testament to how flexible language can be. The meaning evolves, but the essence remains.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Shakespearean phrases, I'm curious, what's the big takeaway for you? Why does all of this matter today?
For me, it shows how language connects us to the past. Shakespeare's words, they're still shaping our thoughts, our expressions, how we see the world.
Right?
It's like we're part of this ongoing conversation that started centuries ago.
I love that. It's also a reminder of how incredible Shakespeare was. He had this ability to see into the human heart and put those truths into words that still resonate with us.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even though language changes, the fundamental human experiences, the ups and downs, the joys and sorrows, they stay the same.
It's like he's whispering across time, sharing his insights about what it means to be human.
Beautifully said. And as we conclude, here's something to think about. How many other phrases are we using without even realizing they came from Shakespeare? Pay attention to the language you encounter, and you might be surprised by what you discover.
You might even stumble upon some hidden Shakespearean treasures. Who knows, maybe we'll do another deep dive into Shakespeare sometime. There's always more to explore. But until then, keep those Shakespearean phrases flowing.